My family turned their backs on me, then they discovered I owned their future. The last thing my mother said to me before she shut the door was, "You're not family anymore." I stood on the porch, holding a cardboard box filled with my clothes, trying not to cry. My younger brother was sitting inside, watching me through the window. He didn't look away. Nobody stopped my mother. Nobody asked where I would sleep that night. What they didn't know was that 3 months earlier, I had quietly bought the company that controlled the biggest investment in our family's future. And when they finally discovered who owned it, they came back to me. But by then, I had already made my decision. My name is Daniel Carter, and this is how my own family lost everything they thought they were entitled to. I grew up believing that family meant you showed up for each other. My parents taught me that. At least, that's what I thought they taught me. My younger brother, Ryan, was always the favorite. He was charming, confident, and somehow managed to turn every mistake into someone else's problem. I was different. I worked. After college, I took a job at a small technology company in Chicago. It wasn't glamorous. I spent years working late, learning how businesses actually operated, and eventually started investing small amounts of money whenever I could. My family thought it was a waste of time. Ryan used to laugh whenever I talked about investing. "You're still playing with stocks," he'd say. "Why don't you buy something useful?" I never argued. I just kept working. Then one afternoon, everything changed. The company I worked for was struggling financially. But I knew something nobody outside the executive team knew. A major contract was about to transform the company. I invested almost everything I had. It was the biggest financial risk I'd ever taken. And it worked. Within 2 years, my investment had multiplied. I didn't become a billionaire. I didn't buy a mansion. But I became financially independent. And I made one promise to myself. I would never let money change the way I treated my family. That promise lasted about 6 months. One Sunday, my parents invited everyone over for dinner. Ryan arrived in a brand new SUV. He had recently started a construction business and was already drowning in debt. But he acted like everything was perfect. During dinner, my father suddenly said, "Ryan needs some help." I looked at my brother. "How much?" "About 80,000. I almost dropped my fork. $80,000. My father nodded. "It's temporary. His business is going through a difficult period." Ryan leaned back in his chair. "I'll pay it back." I looked at him. "You said that last year." His face changed. My mother immediately jumped in. "Daniel, you have the money." That sentence stayed with me. Not "can you help?" Not "would you be willing to help?" Just, "you have the money." Like having money meant everyone else automatically owned a piece of it. I calmly said no. The room went silent. My mother looked disappointed. My father looked angry. Ryan looked offended. Then my mother said something I'll never forget. "You've changed." I nodded. Maybe I finally learned how to say no. Ryan stood up. "You think you're better than us now?" "No." "Then prove it." He walked out. My father followed him. And my mother. She stayed behind long enough to say, "You're going to regret choosing money over your family." I didn't choose money. I chose boundaries. But apparently, they couldn't tell the difference. 3 weeks later, my parents called me. They wanted to sell the family house. The problem was that my father had taken out a second mortgage years earlier. They were behind on payments. Ryan's business had also collapsed. Suddenly, everyone needed money again. This time, I offered something different. I'll buy the house. My mother sounded relieved. Really? Yes, you can stay there. I'll handle the mortgage. You won't have to worry. There was one condition. Ryan couldn't move back in. My mother became furious. He's your brother. He's 34. He has nowhere to go. He can rent an apartment. My mother started crying. Then my father said, "If you won't help your brother, don't bother helping us." That was the moment something inside me broke. I said, "Okay," and hung up. A week later, my parents stopped talking to me. Ryan blocked my number. My mother told relatives that I had become selfish after making money. One aunt even called me and said, "Money has changed you." I almost laughed, because they had no idea what was actually happening behind the scenes. Around that time, I received an email from a private investment group. They were looking to acquire several properties in our hometown. One of those properties was my family's neighborhood. The area had been overlooked for years, but a major redevelopment project was coming. New offices, restaurants, apartments, a transportation hub. Property values were about to explode. I studied the plans. Then I saw something that made me stop. The family house was sitting directly inside the development zone. I had two choices: walk away or buy the property. I bought it, not because I wanted revenge, because I knew the property would eventually become incredibly valuable. I purchased the house through an investment company. My parents never knew. They thought the house belonged to a private investment group. They continued living there. And for almost a year, they never contacted me. Until one morning, I got a call from my father. His voice sounded different. "Daniel, we need to talk." I knew immediately. Something had happened. "What is it?" "The neighborhood is being redeveloped." "I know." "How did you know?" "I follow the market." He paused. Then he said, "The company buying the properties, they own our house." I stayed silent. My father continued, "They're offering everyone money to leave." "How much?" "Almost 4 times what we originally paid for the house." I smiled. "That sounds like a good deal." "It is." Another pause. "But they said the final decision has to come from the owner." I didn't say anything. My father asked, "Do you know who owns the company?" I looked out my window. "Yes." "Who?" I took a breath. "Me." Silence. Absolute silence. Then my father whispered, "What?" "I bought the property last year." "You?" "Yes." "But why?" I thought about the cardboard box, the porch, my mother's words, "You're not family anymore." I said, "Because I saw an opportunity." My father suddenly became emotional. "Son, we're still your parents." "I know. We need somewhere to live." "You'll have somewhere to live." "Can we stay?" "No." He didn't speak. I continued, "I'll give you enough money from the sale to buy a smaller house outright." My father sounded relieved. "Thank you. But there's one condition." "What?" "Ryan doesn't get any of it." His voice immediately changed. "You can't do that." "I can. He's your brother. And you're my father." There was a long silence. Then he said, You're still angry. I answered honestly. Yes, but this isn't about revenge anymore. 2 weeks later, my parents moved into a smaller house. They had no mortgage, no debt, and enough money left over to live comfortably. I also helped my mother start a small bakery business she'd always dreamed about. But I didn't give Ryan anything. Not because I hated him, because I knew exactly what would happen. He would spend it, and then come back for more. And that's exactly what he did. He called me 6 months later. Daniel, I need 20 grand. No. Come on. No. You've got millions. That's not your money. He laughed bitterly. You really think you're better than everyone now? I paused, then said, No, Ryan. I just stopped confusing love with unlimited access. He hung up. I never heard from him again. At least not directly. A year later, I visited my parents. My mother was sitting in her kitchen, selling fresh bread from the bakery she had started. She looked happier than I'd seen her in years. My father was sitting outside drinking coffee. He looked at me and smiled. Your mother says you're doing very well. I am. He nodded. Then he said, You know, I used to think you abandoned us. I didn't answer. He continued, But I realize now. He looked down at his coffee. We abandoned you first. That sentence hit harder than any apology. Because he was right. Sometimes people don't realize they've hurt you until they need something from you. And sometimes the greatest revenge isn't watching them suffer. It's becoming someone they can no longer control. I didn't destroy my family. I didn't take their house. I didn't leave them homeless. I simply stopped allowing them to decide what my success meant. They thought my future belonged to them. They were wrong. I owned my future. And eventually, I realized that was enough. Because sometimes the people who turn their backs on you aren't losing you. They're losing access to the version of you who would have done anything for them. And once that version of you is gone, you don't get him back. Not even with money.